Hey everyone, my name is Wedge. Today's deck tech features a strategy that is near and dear to my heart. Blue-white control has everything you could ever want in a deck. Islands. The version of the strategy we'll be covering is Jim Davis's from the SCG Open in Providence that got him third place. The reason we're covering this specific blue-white strategy is because it could potentially shake up the meta as we know it right now. This isn't your typical control list, trust me. At some point we will cover my blue-white control deck, but that'll probably happen post-rotation when it is no longer in pieces. Yeah, it's my bad. Let's start with lands. This deck runs 27 of them. 4 Hallowed Fountain, 4 Temple of Enlightenment, and 3 Azorius Guildgate represent the dual lands. A place that a Mutavault are pretty much standard since it's one of the only ways this deck actually wins. The mana base is finished off with 6 islands and 6 plains. There's only one creature in the deck, a single Aetherling. You only see him every now and then, but he never really leaves standard viability. He's just too good to forget about completely. He can protect himself, make himself unblockable, and pump himself up offensively or defensively. He's exactly what you want in a control deck. The only other permanents in the deck are 4 Planeswalkers. 2 Elspeth Sun's Champion and 2 Jace Architect of Thought fill very different roles. Elspeth is a win condition. It's pretty simple. If she hits the board and isn't killed immediately, chances are the game will get out of control fast. Her creature generation is unmatched in standard, plus her -2 ability provides great insurance against huge threats on the off chance you can't counter them. Jace performs a couple different duties. First, he helps stem early attackers if that's something you need. By going up to 5 loyalty and reducing power by 1, he's relatively hard to kill early. His more powerful ability, his -2, is why I'd run him. The card advantage is undeniably good. Even though your opponent can make the piles, at the end of the day, if you see a card you want in either of those piles, you get the card. It's that simple. Plus, if your opponent has no way to deal with him on their next turn, you get a second activation if you want it. For some control decks, that's more than enough card advantage to swing a game heavily in your favor. Let's move on to the meat of the deck, the 28 spells. The counter package is pretty standard. 4 Dissolve and 2 Syncopate are great early and late game. Dissolve letting you scry one is nothing to scoff at either. The card's just good, especially when a lot of the strategies in the format take a little bit of time to ramp up. Syncopate is an interesting choice. There's nothing better than using it on turn 2 to get full value. Even late game, chances are you have more open mana than your opponent. So when they play their Pelucranos and still have 5 mana open, you should be able to pay for that with ease. You're a control deck. You shouldn't have mana tapped unless it's the end of their turn. As a control deck, aggro strategies are always annoying. 4 Azorius Charm and 2 Last Breath are particularly useful in helping to delay their advances. The charm can also cycle itself should its other uses become needless late game. Last Breath is just great against Voice of Resurgence, Pack Rat, Nightveil Spectre, and a lot more. The card is well positioned in the current meta. There's no reason not to run a couple. Continuing on with the whole delay aggro theme, we have a full playset of Supreme Verdict. There's no surprise here. The card makes aggro players cry, and if they don't have Boros or Golgari Charm when you cast it on turn 4, the game might end there. Regardless, the card is a necessity in any control deck. Talk about destroying things, 3 Planar Cleansing is the most unique aspect of this strategy. Notice something about this list so far? I finished talking about permanents and didn't include Detention Sphere or Banishing Light. Yeah, the deck runs neither of those. With the recent adoption of Abrupt Decay and Golgari Charm, blue-white control has become a bit weaker since it relies so heavily on those powerful enchantments. Well, what if you just took them out and replaced them with something non-blue decks can't really interact with? That's where Planar Cleansing comes in. The card destroys all creatures, all planeswalkers, all enchantments, everything. Think about it. Detention Sphere's gone. Domri Raid, gone. Underworld Connections, see ya! It's a genius addition to what was a pretty stale strategy already. Think about all the dead draws now. All Abrupt Decays lose their value completely. There's literally nothing they can destroy. It's amazing. I've never been so happy. It's like the ultimate control deck. The best way to just say no. The rest of the deck is made up of 4 Divination, 4 Sphinx's Revelation, and 1 Deicide. The Divinations are really clever here. They match up well with Azorius Charm and Last Breath. The idea is that you hold off their attackers early with your Disruption and then use Divination to draw into late game faster. The very general combinations of effects are a time-tested success in control decks. Speaking of time-tested, 4 Sphinx's Revelation should surprise no one. Considered one of the strongest cards in the entire format, the card advantage is disturbing. If control players could ask for one card that helps them win games they had no business winning, the Revelation would be it. It's a game changer every time it's cast for 3 or more. The impact it has on a game is just ridiculous. The one of Deicide is a nod to Underworld Connections. Sure, it can also remove any other enchantment, but you have plenty of other spells to deal with enchantment creatures. Underworld Connections is one of the more annoying cards against you. Deicide helps to keep those mono-black players down where they belong. Whoa. Sorry, I get carried away sometimes. While this strategy doesn't have any detention spheres or banishing lights, it is still a control deck. If anything, it's even more control-like than it was before. Planar Cleansing is 6 mana, double the cost of the cards it's replacing. You still play this control deck like you would normally, except for the fact that you have so many Divinations. If you see a line of play that'll let you remove something that matters on turn 2, then play Divination safely on turn 3, do it. The card advantage is invaluable. Plus, the sooner you get to 4 mana, the sooner you can Supreme Verdict and take a piece of their soul. Let's talk matchups and sideboard. We'll start with the reason the deck was built, Black-Green Devotion. With Abrupt Decay and Golgari Charm being main deck, Detention Sphere and Banishing Light lose their flair a bit, hence your entire build. You want to bring in another Deicide for their Underworld Connections. You don't want to wait until turn 6 to get rid of it with Cleansing. I've seen a few people add in Jace Memory Adept for this matchup, but that's a personal choice. I could go either way with it. Lastly, Celestial Flare could come in really handy here. Your Last Breath can help deal with Pack Rat, Grey Merchant, and Nightveil Spectre, but Desecration Demon is a bit more bothersome than that. You could also side in a Reprisal or 2, but I don't think it's worth it just for the Demon. Remember, if you can keep Underworld Connections off the table, their whole strategy is make you discard, play stuff, and hit you. Just be a control deck and don't be afraid to counter Thoughtseize if you're protecting a Sphinx's Revelation. This entire matchup is about how many extra cards you can draw. Next, we'll touch on Jund Monsters since it's one of your worst matchups. Without D-Sphere and Banishing Light, Domri Raid and Xenaghost get a lot better, especially early game. In your main deck, you don't have a lot of ways to deal with them. If you can't counter them, that's unfortunate. After Sideboard, it gets slightly better, but they also get a ton of stuff, so actually it totally doesn't. Anyways, you want to bring in Renounce the Guilds. That card is a powerhouse against both of their Planeswalkers. In addition, bringing in a few Negate is a good idea. Trust me, you do not want to face down a turn 2 Domri Raid. You don't want it. Negate's worth it. At its core, Jund Monsters is a creature deck. Celestial Flare is an all-star in this matchup since most of the creatures they'll attack with have value. Even if you just get a Courser out of it, that's still pretty good for you. Lastly, you could bring in Reprisal, but I'm not sure what you would take out for it. I'm willing to hear suggestions. I admit I'm not totally sold on that card, but most of the time it will kill Mistcutter Hydra, and that is something that is very important. The last strategy we'll discuss is Red-White Burn due to its continued popularity. Game 1 might be a bit rough. You don't interact with a lot of their stuff, plus Supreme Verdict and Planar Cleansing might be dead in the water. They'll come out strong and never let up. Your one job is to just try to live long enough to chain Sphinx's Revelations. Yeah, let's move on to Game 2. You have options here. Archangel of Thune is a monster. It's definitely worth bringing in. It isn't out of War Leader's Helix range, but hopefully you also brought in Negates to counter all of their spells. Along the same vein of thought, Dispel is also super strong here. You should have room for all this since Planar Cleansing and Supreme Verdict both get a lot worse after board. The last card I'll suggest is, well, more Last Breath. It kills all their stuff, but for real, Phoenix doesn't get to come back anymore. That's value. I hope you liked this interesting version of Blue-White Control. I think players will take notice of what this deck is trying to do. For once in a long time, they might actually think Abrupt Decay isn't the best card ever. I can dream, right? Anyways, what'd you guys think? Is this a version of Control you might be willing to play? Not gonna lie, playing Planar Cleansing in a competitive format sounds like a real-life achievement to me, just saying. As always, subscribe below for the latest and most reliable Magic the Gathering information you could ever need. This is the Manosaurus Tom Wedge, thanks for watching, see you next time.